Hi, this is Paul Marks, co-host of Decoding Multifamily. This episode of Decoding Multifamily is brought to you by one of our founding sponsors at the Multifamily Media Network, AppWork. Much more than just maintenance, AppWork is advanced business intelligence. Streamline maintenance workers' workflows and keep an eye on the leaderboard as your service teams enjoy the gamification of maintenance. Visit appworkco.com today and transform your productivity.
Welcome to Decoding Multifamily, a video podcast that explores different aspects of multifamily operations and takes a deep dive into the important topics that affect the apartment industry. Watch as co-hosts Suzanne Hopson and Paul Marks engage with multifamily thought leaders, rising multifamily superstars, and apartment industry icons. Decoding is defined as the process of extracting meaningful and useful information. So watch closely as we begin Decoding Multifamily.
To this episode of Decoding Multifamily, we have a great episode with a wonderful guest who's going to share a lot of her experiences throughout the multifamily industry over the years. I do want to make mention of the fact that we are part of the Multifamily Media Network. I encourage you to go to multifamilymedianetwork.com and sign up for the newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter, which will discuss all the different podcasters and great hosts that we have, as well as a lot of blogs that you can take advantage of to get some great education and information of what's going on in the multifamily industry. So let's get into the episode. I want to introduce my co-host, the fantastic Suzanne Hopson. Suzanne, tell our viewers a little bit of our guest today.
Thank you, Paul. And yes, I'm always excited, but super excited today because I have had the opportunity to speak to our special guest a lot over the past several weeks. It's been a great reunion since spending some time with her on the road last year on the speaking circuit. And so I have the pleasure of introducing Sherry Freitas. Sherry is the former executive managing director of property management at Rangewater Residential, but she has a long history of being a powerhouse in our industry. And she really, if I were to just wrap it up, which I won't because we're going to really dive in and decode her today, she embodies the essence of leadership. And she also brings decades of experience to our industry. And so we'll dive into all the things that she's done. I think that the audience, Sherry, will be really excited to dive in today and hear more about you and what you're up to.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. And again, I've really enjoyed reconnecting with you over the last couple of weeks. And the synergy that we create has been very exciting for me.
Yeah. Well, now we get to share it with a whole bunch of other people. So here we go. So I'd like to just start out with a real basic question, but I think it gives our viewers a context of how you got into this in the first place. And that's really just what made you decide to pursue a career in real estate.
I mean, from my perspective, I didn't mean to fall into this. This was a mistake, or I guess it wasn't a mistake, but it was at the time. I went to look for an apartment and I got interviewed in the kitchen. My roommate got interviewed like in the living room. She was hired. Then I was hired a couple weeks later. We needed an apartment discount. That's basically how it happened. And, I'll tell you, it's a wonder that I actually stayed in because my very first manager, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about some of the struggles of being a woman in this business, but my very first manager told me that I would never be more than a leasing consultant. And so I got really mad and, interviewed, of course, that's the first thing you do. But then I got determined and said, I'm just going to prove her wrong. And so that's kind of been my mantra ever since, is that there's really not a whole lot I can't do. I just got to figure it out how to do it. So, I've moved in, I've my career has been one that I never said no to anything that was thrown at me. And so that's given me a lot of really exciting opportunities along the way. It's given me a lot of headaches too, but it's for the most part, it's been a wonderful career. I'm very, very lucky that I've had the opportunities that I've had.
Well, and with that, I think that we've been really lucky to have you as well and your influence. And it isn't just, our backyard that you've had an influence over. You've overseen a portfolio of 300,000 units
Mm.
and across, not only US markets, but Europe, South America, Asia. I mean, it's extensive what you've done, the impact you've made from, needing an apartment way back when to becoming someone that has really worked in every market. And so I just can't wait to dive into that more. Um, Getting into what we just talked about in some of those struggles, um, the challenges that you've faced. What are some of the challenges that you have faced that you feel like you've overcome or were pivotal in your career and how you've been successful?
I felt like in the early stages, and this goes back probably 15 or 16 years, and I've been in the business for 35 years this year, which really ages me.
Yeah.
But, you know, about 15 years ago, I was kind of in a situation where I was interviewing for a leadership position in my company. And, I remember talking to a recruiter and him saying, "Why are they not giving you this position?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm doing the job today and I don't understand." And, the reality was it was not given to me. And I will tell you, I did not handle it really well. And that's probably one of my career regrets, is that I did not handle it with the professionalism that I probably should have. So hindsight is 2020. Emotional intelligence is an important factor in life. But and I eventually ended up getting laid off from that position, because I kept wondering, well, they don't need to hire two men and me and have me here too. Like, this doesn't make sense. And then, of course, bingo, I got laid off. But I got really determined after that point again and said, you know what, my next step is going to be what I want it to be. And I'm going to network, and I'm going to treat not having a job like having a job. And so, that was my first big dose of it, that, I knew I had to work even harder than the average person because I was a female. I also learned that how I presented myself in rooms also made a big difference. I had a supervisor years ago tell me, "Sherry, don't tell people you feel, tell people you believe." And so instead of saying, "I feel like we should do this," I would say, "I believe this is the right way we should go."
Hmm.
And it's kind of empowering when you say that, right? Because it gives you that confidence. But, it was that tip that made me really conscious of how I presented myself in any room. I also had a leader, years ago, that said, "Sherry, you have a voice, use it." And I said, "Well, I'm not the person that always says something just to have a voice in a room, just to be heard. I'm going to say something if I have something to add. And if I'm passionate about it, I'm going to let you know about it." But those were kind of the things that I've worked with through my career. I still think that, I struggle with it. I think most women do. Like, "Oh, am I smart enough to be in this room?" I'm assuming that they are going to take what I'm saying and not maybe value it as much as I think. But I've learned over the years that I have a lot of value to give, and that if someone doesn't recognize that value, it's probably time to move on and to find a way around that. So um, it take a long time to get there, but and I still think, like any other woman, we all have our doubts, and we have our drama, that noise that goes on in our head that we have to fight regularly. But I think if you can constantly think about what value you bring and what you have that inner confidence, we make a difference. And I think that that's what we all set out to do. And so it's just getting that message across.
Yeah, I was also given that piece of advice about the word feel. And I think it had come into the vernacular because it is an example of passion and level of commitment behind what you're about ready to say. But you're right. When it comes out, it almost discounts the brain matter that went behind what you're about ready to say. So it's about heart and about head, not one or the other. And I think that's a really great piece of advice. I also think you mentioned something that is a good exercise for people. And I don't know if you did it where you wrote it down or if it was just mentally what you would do. And that exercise of going through and saying why you're in the room, like why you're worthy of saying what you're about ready to say, or the value that you bring. And I know many of us in, male, female, whatever, all have that inside voice at times where we feel like we might not or should not be in the room. And so I really appreciate you bringing some real solid tools, like ways of thinking that could help people that might be suffering from that. It's a whole nother show, right, Paul? I mean, we could
Right,
talk about that.
exactly.
Imposter
Yeah.
syndrome is what, it really is, right?
Mhm.
But thank you for that. And, we talk about this all the time because some of the other things that happen for women in particular are this balancing act of family. And I've seen it just change so much since I had my daughter, who's 32 now, from, my 10-year-old that I have. Much more flex in the workplace today than there was, back when we started out. And I love all of that. But how do you really, Sherry, in your world, with what you have going on, and I know we're going to get into what you're up to, but still extremely full life. How do you do that when you're managing all these units and you have all this responsibility? How do you find time for yourself and your own health and well-being?
I always laugh that I'm a big proponent of work-life balance, but I'm not very good at it. So
I love your honesty.
so it's like do as I say, but not as I do. I've always made sure that my team knows that, because I work these weird hours just because I can, and my children are grown, and it's gave me this new sense of freedom to be able to work when I want. I mean, I still work hard not to miss the big things, and I would tell anybody and everybody, you have to live your work life with no regrets. I have a few regrets, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So when I have people that work for me, it's always, if you need to go home with a sick child, you go home with that sick child. I know you're going to come back and do what you can and get the job done, because that's the people that we hire, right? That's the people that we work with and we surround ourselves with. And if you can't get it done, it's my job to support you and help you get it done. So, I do, shut it off occasionally. I do enjoy time with my family. And I went on my very first 2-week vacation ever this past year, and it was fabulous. And I actually disconnected. And that's probably the first time I've ever done it. But, I feel like I've got really great people around me. And I need to, I remind myself all the time that those are the ones that when I prop them up, they prop me up too. So, again, I'm not the best at it, but my son played college baseball, and I can tell you his senior year in college, I didn't miss a single game. I saw everyone, and I did see a game when I was in China working. I had to watch it at 2 a.m., but I watched it at 2
But
a.m.
you watched it.
You figure it out.
That is so key. You're right. When you get to this point in your life, you're looking backward at what you've done and what you haven't done. And again, I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing not just all the great, glorious stuff, but also, that important thing, that thing of regret that you don't want others to have. I think that's a really great share. So thank you for that. When we talk about leadership, and obviously you exude leadership in many different ways, small and big. What are some of the things that you would give advice to in our emerging leaders out there in multifamily? What are some of the things that are really critical for them to be successful that you see coming or present today?
I worked with an executive coach last year for about a year and a half. And one of the things that he taught me a lot about myself. Some of it was hard lessons to hear and things that I had to work on. But one of the things that he taught me about was being intentional about things that I know people don't automatically see about me as a leader. Um, I've been called a hard ass before. I've been called the general before, because I'm very serious when I'm at work. I mean, I'm a get stuff done kind of girl,
No.
and so one of the things he said was, I need you to sit down and write down some of the things that you want people to see about you that they don't know and they don't see generally from you. So I called them my intentions. And I have a sticky note still on my desk to this day that has those things that I know people need to see. And they need to see that I care, because I tend to, when I'm in that mindset, I can kind of forget that. So they need to, and my heart is really big. Like, I will drop anything for anybody, but they don't always see that about me. Especially if you don't know me well. I have to be intentional about slowing down, because sometimes my speed kind of scares people a little bit. I have to be very intentional about letting people know I like to have fun, which I really do. And so I have to be very intentional about, being gracious and, I've always said thank you, but really making sure that people know how much I appreciate what they do. So, those are just a few of the things that I think are, have been good for me. The other thing I will tell you is that I learned a long time ago, there's a couple of things I have to be aware of. And one of them is that I can't take things personally. This is a business, and that resident might get under my skin, or that team member might get under my skin, but I can't take it personally. It's not about me. How they respond is really about them. How I can control what I can control, right? And then don't assume that I know what everybody else is thinking, because you can work yourself up into a really quick tizzy, thinking about how that person's going to react or how they're going to take things. And so I would say those are probably two of the big things that I know help me on a regular basis to kind of get past some of the stuff in my head.
Yeah, the intentionality about it. I love that. The intention post-it. It's really about bringing everything up to that conscious level where you can be thinking through that filter instead of blindly bouncing around and hoping people can get you.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Because they don't always get you, and because they don't see all the whole picture always. They get snippets.
So we've got about 17 and a half minutes left in the episode. And Sherry, I wanted to ask you a question. If one were to look at your work history, your resume, if you will, it's like a who's who of major multifamily companies in major roles. You started out by telling us you were interviewed in an apartment for a part-time job, and you've gone through to running global property management divisions for major companies. So what I'm interested in knowing is, what was your favorite role that you had in your career, and what was the most challenging role, and are they both the same? But before you answer it, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to take a very quick pause in this episode of Decoding Multifamily to talk a little bit about our sponsor of this episode, AppWork. Best known for exceptional maintenance workflow management, AppWork offers so much more. Optimize operations with its advanced business intelligence that turns data into strategy. Simplify your operations with AppWork's intuitive platform. Service team members love the gamification of maintenance workflows and leaderboards, making everyday tasks a competition to be number one. From project management to team communication, AppWork has you covered. Visit appworkco.com today. Okay, Sherry, so I asked you the question before the break about what was your favorite role in your work life so far, and what was your most challenging role, and were they close to the same?
I've had a lot of favorite roles. I wouldn't have been in this business this long, and I've also had a lot of challenging roles. I will say that working with the global team at a former company was um, a great learning experience. It was a challenge because I was an influencer. I wasn't necessarily 100% accountable, and that's something that I thrive on is accountability. I got to travel the world. I got to learn how our business is done outside the US. And a lot of times it wasn't done before. So we were creating it as we went. We had this, this ability to just start and look at it fresh. So that was really exciting. I got to deal with all different cultures and people. And as hard as it was really rewarding because you got to see, and I call it light bulbs, you get to see people's light bulbs go off and you can actually see it come to fruition after a lot of hard work. I also have, recently left a role that I absolutely loved. And it was really hard at the same time because we had grown very quickly. We had not scaled the business to support that fast growth, which I think a lot of companies go through. And I was really brought in to kind of get it to the point where it could be scaled or we could catch up. I equate it to changing a flat tire, driving 90 miles an hour. But once you get a plan in place to kind of get it caught up and you get everybody on board as to what you're trying to do, then you can get through some of those humps. Like I said, it was really hard because we were going through a lot of change at the same time. We had people who were, in the wrong seats on the bus. We had people that, had just, didn't want to grow in that direction. And so we had to kind of take a hard look at everything and really plan it out. And we had to make sure that we weren't, as I call, killing people as we went because we just thrown too much at them. And like I said, I worked a lot of hours and I loved every minute of it because it was so easy to see the evolution. And that's, progress is what I thrive off of is like, the little wins and celebrating those little wins as we go along. Because sometimes if you're not celebrating as you go, it hurts in the meantime. So, but yeah, those are probably two of the most challenging, but the best opportunities that I've had because it was just, and I will add one more because while I was on the global team at the previous company, I was asked to run the systems team, the global systems team at the same time, which I'm not a technology person. Like I know enough to be dangerous and they're asking me to, run a team of, computer IT, systems guys and girls. And I was not prepared for it. And I laughed because I was like, okay, you all need to talk to me in Fisher Price terms because because talk to me like I'm 5 because that's what I need to understand so that I can go back and communicate it to leadership. So, but that was challenging, but it was really fun because now I know enough to be really dangerous.
There you go.
I love it.
Suzanne?
Yeah, there's so much there. One of the things that brought us together was the innovation and centralization and specialization, that much of that work you had been working on for many, many years before it became sort of the coined popular thing to talk about. But tell us a little bit about that journey and where you see that really going for our industry. I mean, maybe a little bit about what impact you've had in your organizations and in your work, and then maybe what you see is up for us next.
Yeah, I mean, we were in the early stages of rolling out some what I call specialization because, centralization kind of has a negative connotation to it, especially from a team perspective, because people automatically think that we're losing jobs. But the reality was we were really trying to repurpose and give people, the ability to do less tasks better because, in our business, we ask our community directors and really anybody that's on site to wear a lot of different hats and be experts at all of them. Like you need to be an expert in landscaping and accounting and, property inspections and customer service and technology. And it's impossible for anybody to do everything well. And so this really alleviates some of that constraint on people. We also went through COVID when everybody wanted to work from home. And so the specialization in my mind gives people who want that capability or a hybrid role, it gives them some of that ability to do that, especially if their family situation requires that they do that. So I think that, the value, people always look, a lot of owners look at it as, oh, I'm going to save money because I'm going to cut people. And that's not the way I look at it at all. I look at it from the perspective of we're going to reallocate resources. We're going to, we might save some money, but I honestly think that the value of specialization is in how we're going to do things better because we've got intense focus on it. Think about collections. If we've got somebody who does collections all day long and they're really, really good at it, they don't get interrupted. And so that's, think about turnkey. If we've got guys that punch apartments, and I say guys, and I want to say women have a really good role in our service team. So I'm not using that as as a restrictive term. So, but turnover, if they turn apartments all day, they become experts at it. They know they've got a system. They don't miss something. Our resident experience is greater. So people may stay longer because they have a great move-in experience. And so you think about that's the value it brings. It's better collections. It's a higher number of renewals. It's better customer satisfaction because we've addressed their issue faster. And so, we might save some money along the way, but I think we're going to earn that money back and it's going to hit the bottom line in a lot of other ways as well. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And I think that, where we need to grow is that we've got to get the technology to catch up to what we're trying to accomplish. It's got to be simple, and it should be. We need to make sure that we are not adding things that make it more stressful, and that, I think the other thing that's really big in it is we've got to be able to communicate what we're doing and across a lot of different lines, and it's got to be seamless. So, we've got a lot of kinks to work out along the way. There's companies that are doing it 100%. There's not a single person on their properties. I don't know if that's the right thing or not. I think, in my opinion, if you take away the tasks that are the, routine or maybe not the things that drive our value necessarily all the time, and we put people on site that are customer service representatives that can really take care of our customers instead of have to be accountants and everything else, then I think that's even more value too, because that experience of the resident is going to.
Yeah. I love all of that. It does. And it's a great way of looking at it. It's not a one size fits all is what I hear you saying there, Sherry. And I think we can get trapped in that mindset when we hear the label of specialization. Oh yeah, that's just a one size fits all. And it certainly isn't. One of the things that you said a little bit earlier, and it plays into this, and you have been challenged with this, and I'd love for you to share because we hear about this, the change management piece of it, and how that impacts the teams, frontline, the residents, even. What can you share with us that you felt you did successfully with change management in the different roles that you've been in, and maybe some things that weren't successful so we can avoid those things?
It's funny because when I worked for one of the companies, we did an assessment of all of the projects we had rolled out over a couple of years and whether they worked or they didn't. And we really analyzed why they didn't work and why they did work. And 95% of the time, they didn't work because we didn't implement them right, which means we didn't get the buy-in. We didn't have all of our communication plan in place. And so I think the most powerful part of any kind of change is making sure you've answered questions before they get asked and be really super prepared when you roll it out and you're going to have things that have to work itself out, but really make sure that you spend the time with the communication piece, that you get people on board, that you talk through their fears. Because the biggest resistance to change is fear, because people are scared that I'm going to lose my job, or I'm not going to do it right, or, I already know I'm comfortable over here. And, I think people, if I can give anybody advice, is that I had an old boss who used to say, Sherry, change and win, change and win. And I still say that to my family. They laugh at me all the time about it. But, that's part of life. And when you think about it, we pack up and move from place to place. That's a big change, but we do it and we love it, right? Or we change a job, or we change our car, whatever it is. And we make those personal changes very easily. We do our research. We've talked about it with people. And so it really equates to just making sure that you've taken those extra steps in, and taking it slow enough, because we usually just want to push it all out because we're behind some deadline. So I think setting very realistic goals of rollout is important, because if the second that you haven't done it right, you're going to have that resistance and it's going to stop or slow down tremendously.
Well, we've got about 4 minutes left. So, Suzanne, I think you got time for one more question. And I've got a question that I'll wait until you get your chance.
Yeah, really just one more, Sherry. And that is, what are you up to next? Like, what are you doing? And
you stole my question.
Oh, I did? Oh, my bad. See, we waited both till the last minute to ask this question.
Go ahead.
That's funny, Paul.
Yeah. That's a good question, because I'm not sure I have an answer for you. I have taken the last 5 or 6 weeks and have just been doing a lot of really great networking. I have met one person who's introduced me to another person. And I actually said to somebody last night, one thing I'm going to carry on after I go back to work is that I'm going to make sure I network with somebody I don't know every week, because I've learned so much from people. And I had a call last week and I got off the phone. I was like, oh my God, I think she can be my best friend. So, we've had it. So I don't know. I mean, I've talked to the vendor side. I've talked to consultants. I've talked, I'm doing a little consulting work, but I'm talking to owner managers and a little bit of everything. I just, I know what my strengths are. I know culture is a big, huge thing for me. I need to make sure I find a company that fits with my values and that I align with. Well, I'm not going to do this forever, as much as I'd like to say that I could do it forever. But you know what? I want to make sure the last hurrah is exactly that. A lot of fun. And I don't know if I'll ever fully retire, but maybe eventually. But I don't know. That's a good question. I'll tell you, call me back in like maybe a month or so, and I'll know. Maybe.
I will. I will. No, it's exciting stuff, and thanks for sharing even just where you're at today. We're rooting you on.
Thank you.
So I've got one final question since Suzanne took that one. So you started out this episode by talking about how you got in the industry, and you were interviewed in, did you say in a kitchen is where you were interviewed?
Yes.
How's the interview process changed for you over the years? Is it much more in depth now than it was when you first got in the business?
It's funny. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It really depends on the company, which says a lot about a company,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of assessments out there that people want you to take. And so, I find a lot of excitement when I have a company that is selling me as much as I'm selling myself. Because I think that it's got to be that mutual understanding. And I want to know fully what I'm getting into. I like hard things, but I really want to know what it's going to be like. And so, just getting in there and having somebody, I've walked into interviews and I've not answered a single question. People have just talked about themselves and their company, and that's great, but they don't know anything about me.
Yeah.
And so, I think that learning how to interview is an art. And somebody taught me a long time ago how to interview, and it's still one of my favorite things to do. So I have a tendency to interview my interviewer. So don't tell anybody that, because they might be prepared.
No one's
They might not want to
gonna
interview me.
The word's not going to get out.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Sherry, for being with us. You've got a great background and history in the industry, and appreciate all you've done for the industry and to inspire others who have come up, who you've worked with over the years. So thank you so much. But we are going to be back again with our next episode, but you can catch not only Decoding Multifamily, but you can also catch all the other great podcasts and blogs that are on the Multifamily Media Network. Go to multifamilymedianetwork.com, subscribe to the weekly newsletter that tells you about all the podcasts and blogs that have dropped in that week. Some great industry icons and industry leaders who are part of our podcast host team. So thanks a lot for watching today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Decoding Multifamily video podcast, and please tune in to future episodes. If you would like to subscribe to our weekly newsletter or discuss being a podcast guest on Decoding Multifamily, please go to multifamilymedianetwork.com. Thank you for watching Decoding Multifamily.
Thank you again to AppWork for sponsoring this episode of Decoding Multifamily. Just imagine carrying a digital make-ready board in your pocket with work order tracking and maintenance technician leaderboards designed to gamify the process and bring out your team's competitive best. AppWork offers solutions to headaches that have plagued the multifamily industry for decades. Visit appworkco.com today.